Hey folks, welcome to the 338th Dark Horse Podcast live stream. I am Dr. Bret Weinstein, turning off his phone notifications too late. Sorry folks. You are Dr. Heather Hying.
Let me just say that this is one of very many reasons to have none of your notifications on, ever.
Ever. Yes, no. Mental health being the primary argument for that approach, which I applaud. On the other hand,
half-assery at the beginning of podcasts is down the list of reasons.
Yeah, it's below the fold. Let's put it that way. Not that podcasts have a fold.
Yeah. So how long before people have no idea what
below the fold?
What below the fold means?
Yeah. When's the dime going to drop on that one? Right. As soon as wooden nickels go out of fashion. I don't know. We can keep going.
You could keep going.
We could. Yeah. Well, you could fight fire with fire.
So 338, here we are.
Yep.
Live stream 338, not a prime, but we got a total eclipse of the sun today on this planet, which is really cool. So there is that, not mathematical, but astronomical intrigue going on. Very, very cool.
Yes.
Not here. We can't see it where we are.
To have a feast in its honor, then it would be gastronomical as well. All right. Enough. I'm
just going to do this.
You're just going to do that.
Yeah.
It's what a lot of our life looks like, and we both get it.
It's not true.
No, that's true.
That is not true. Okay, we are going to talk about, whether or not the flock cameras are the tip of an iceberg. But before that, today we're going to talk about the WNBA and what's going on over there with women's sports a little bit. and then after today's live stream, we're going to have a Q&A on Locals. So join us on Locals. You can catch a watch party right now. We're going to do a Q&A. We do a couple, usually a month. And you can join us there and interact some in the comments. We also have all of our past Q&As up there. We're a little bit more, is it even possible, more off the cuff? A little bit looser in the Q&As. So
our cuffs are off.
I don't have any. I already took mine off, but you're not going to take yours off.
We don't know.
We do know.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's true. These are not the kind of cuffs you can take off, which I'm not even sure. I guess
it would require taking the shirt off.
Striptease, or am I right that the
I've never been
Chippendale style stripping often leaves the cuffs in place? And
yes, I believe I've never been to such a show, but in popular media such as the Full Monty, perhaps we see evidence of that. I don't know if they pulled off that.
The cuffs on.
They didn't leave the cuffs on. That wouldn't have been the Full Monty.
It was
the Monty with cuffs.
It was the working class version.
Yeah, no cuffs.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Cuffless.
Yeah. Maybe like a tool. What is it? A
hammer loop.
Tool loop. Yeah.
A hammer loop. Yeah. Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be a hammer. I've seen mallets. Just a tool loop. It has to be a hammer loop, really.
I think it's a hammer loop, whether you use it for a mallet or not. Yeah, a very useful feature of CrowdHealth pants.
Sure, but I wonder if the striptease dudes could retain a tool loop.
A tool. Ooh. Yeah. No, I see where you're headed.
Yeah.
I don't love it, but I get it.
I was talking about doing handyman work around the house, just like having a hammer.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want them hurting their members.
I don't know what's in men's porn these days. I know even less about what's in women's porn, but I wouldn't be shocked if it were like guys doing stuff around the house underdressed.
I mean, I think that was always the case.
Was that always the... I mean, I don't think it was always the case that women were watching porn, frankly.
Well, no, I'm talking about images. I'm saying that back in the 70s and 80s when Playboy and then I don't know when Playgirl shows up, were out there, and I saw very, very little of it. But my sense is that artfully posed men appearing to do things that were of use while being completely naked and quite beautiful was indeed a successful photographic erotica genre for women. Yes.
All right. I had completely forgotten that Playgirl existed, but am I imagining it, or did a very good friend of mine's mother, I think she was like editor of Playgirl back in the day.
I don't know.
Maybe I made that up, but I
think
it's true.
I don't even have a guess as to who you're talking about, so I can't even prod it out of you at the moment, nor would I want to.
Yeah.
On air.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it. I'm not going to slander anybody by the woman in question is now gone, but I do not want to.
Then I do know who you're talking.
Cast shade on her memory if I'm in fact making that that up, but I don't think I am. I think it was real.
I mean, I don't know. To each their own.
Yeah. I'm sure it was. I'm sure it
level.
was much tamer back in the day. I don't know that it exists now, but
Probably not.
what exists now is a lot less tame than what once was.
But were she still around, and had she had the job that you think she might have, we could have asked her about the presence of tulips on otherwise naked men in her magazine.
Totally. And she was a utterly marvelous person who would have, you mean, the kind of person you would never imagine would be in such a role. And,
No, but she would have been down for this
oh,
conversation.
totally.
Yeah.
It would have been a great conversation.
Yeah. Well, alas, it is never to happen.
Yep.
Okay, so let's do sponsors right up at the top.
Yeah.
With three carefully sposen chancers. We're going to go with this carefully sposen chancers today.
Sposen chancers, yes.
Yes, we are.
They're sposen with
care and with nixtamalized corn.
Kate Greer.
Kate Greer.
Yes.
Yes, let's see if I can. Okay, so today's first sponsor is Chasa Mips. I'm going to see. Can I Twitterize the entire entry?
I think at some point you should deliver the actual.
I think I have to.
The actual
Our
name.
first sponsor today is Masa Chips. They make ridiculously delicious chips with simple, real, whole ingredients, including organic nixtamalized corn, as I already suggested, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Masa Chips are made the way that all of our food used to be made. They're fried in 100% beef tallow, no seed oils ever, no artificial dyes or additives either. You can taste the difference and your body can feel the difference. They're crunchy and delicious, and after you eat them, you feel satisfied and energetic. Masa also supports the American farms. Masa also supports American farms and regenerative agriculture. I doubt they support all of them. The American farms, no.
Yeah.
Trying to make that perfect. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, no. I'm with you. I think your correction is an excellent one.
Okay. They support American farms and regenerative agriculture. Choosing real food heals us and our environment, which in turn makes us even more healthy. These chips don't only avoid all the bad stuff, they taste incredible too. There's a reason that Sprouts Farmers Market, Wegmans, Target, and Whole Foods have all picked them up. These are the real deal. To try Masa Chips with guac or in nachos, you just eat them straight out of the bag. That's generally how we have done it. I've gone back to basics recently with their original chips, but every single flavor is amazing. They've got white corn chips and blue corn too. Hatch chili is Hatch chili season right now, so try their Hatch chili chips. Not that their chips are inherently seasonal. Cobanero, that's this one, I believe. Yes, Cobanero.
I believe you're mispronouncing it. I know you finish and we will relitigate that particular question.
Cobanero.
All right. So you came up with some fancy argument for why it should be pronounced Cobanero, having something to do with a locality.
Grown near Coban, Guatemala, Cobanero is a rare Maya chili that brings the perfect combination of heritage and heat to our chips. Tasting notes: papaya, roasted corn, and fire.
All right. Well, I agree. It's awkward for my position that it says something on the bag to that effect. But is it not obvious that the nature of those chips from corn, which is naturally grown on a cob, and habanero being a spiciness, that Cobanero would be the correct pronunciation? Is that not?
If there weren't a chili named for the place, Coban, which I don't know if we've been in Coban. We've been in Copan, Honduras, and we've been in several places ending in Ungo in Guatemala.
Yeah.
I don't remember being in Coban, but I believe that it's a place, and I believe that there's a chili named after it. And given that it's, I don't think I've ever heard of this place before, but there's no way, given that it's a Spanish word, that it's Coban.
Yeah.
It's not Coban.
But
And there's an accent
chip.
over the A, Coban.
But it is a corn chip.
Maíz, then.
All right.
Maíz.
So is your position then, in response to my contention, no Huehue Tenango? Is that your...
No way, Ue Tenango.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
All
means
right.
that your nickname from now on is Ue Tenango. Spelled, for those who are fascinated by this conversation, which means three of you, Huehuetenango. Huehue Tenango. A place where we spent some time.
Yes, back in the day.
Selling a 1977 Toyota Corolla.
Yep.
Yep.
That was not going to make it back.
That was not going to
It's
make it back.
probably still out there. Given
I
the
think it is. I
skill
think it
of the
was. That
mechanics in
would have been
part of the
back in
world.
1991.
91.
And
It was already on its last legs.
No, we'd put a couple of new sort of lowrider Mustang tires in the back. We put a Nuevo Arranque in it. We put a new starter motor in it. And we had taken good care of that car. Well, it had been my car. It had been my first car. And it was the car in which I learned how to, change oil and change tires and all of that. And got us a lot of good places. Got me a lot of good places first. And then us. And that it is probably still living its best life in Huehuetenango,
Just
Guatemala.
imagine that all of that time with that vehicle, Masa Chips had already existed. It's like the ultimate do-over. All right, that's a non sequitur. But
Okay, yes,
yeah,
I think it is. I was trying to make a connection.
it was not a sequitur, I can assure you of that.
Yes, no sequiturs in that sentence. No. All right. Masa is amazing. They've got white corn chips, blue corn, hatch chili, Cobanero, lime, and wait for it, churro with cinnamon. They're all amazing. Churro isn't my particular favorite, but you like it. Zach likes it.
Churro is amazing. Yeah, see? Just you've got to zero out your expectations because
it's a chip.
It's a different genre, but it is delightful.
Awesome. Ready to give Masa a try? Go to masachips.com/darkhorse and use code darkhorse for 25% off your first order. One thing to know, because Masa uses real ingredients and makes everything in small batches, certain flavors go out of stock regularly. This was true last time we read the ad. I didn't change it, but a month or so ago, we got our hands on this Cobanero again recently after it was sold out. Again, that's masachips.com/darkhorse and use code darkhorse for 25% off, or click the link in the video description or scan the QR code. Awesome. Our second sponsor this week, that says first, but I'm sure it's our second because I just read one.
Counting.
Yeah. You're good at that. Isn't that like below 5? You do a good job of keeping track.
I am perfectly capable of counting well above 5. However, below 5, I have a nearly flawless record. Yes.
Our second sponsor this week is Xlear. Xlear is a nasal spray that supports respiratory health. It's widely available online and in stores, and both it and the company that makes it are fantastic. That's Xlear, Xlear, pronounced clear. We wash our hands. Not just us here at Dark Horse. We wash our hands, and that's good, but it's rare to get sick through your hands. Nasal hygiene often gets overlooked, but the majority of bacteria and viruses that make us sick enter through our mouths and noses. Enter Xlear. Xlear is a nasal spray that contains xylitol, which also starts with an X, a 5-carbon sugar which reduces the stickiness of bacteria and viruses to our tissues. When xylitol is present, bacteria and viruses such as strep, SARS-CoV-2, and RSV don't adhere to our airways as well. This helps our body's natural defense mechanisms easily flush them away. Xlear is a simple nasal spray. Use it morning and evening. It takes just 3 seconds. It's fast and easy and decidedly healthy. Listen to Nathan Jones, Xlear's founder, talking to Bret on the Inside Rail a couple years ago. The following year, last year, Lon Jones, osteopath and inventor of Xlear, talked to Bret about how xylitol interacts with respiratory viruses. We recommend those conversations both on Inside Rail, and we highly recommend Xlear as a daily habit and prophylactic against respiratory illnesses. That's Xlear with an X, Xlear. Get Xlear online or at your pharmacy, grocery store, or natural products retailer, and start taking 6 seconds each day to improve your nasal hygiene and support your respiratory health.
Wow. All right. I recommend the stuff and use it, of course, as you do.
Yep.
We are now, I would point out, on to our third and final sponsor for this week, which happens to be, Heather, CrowdHealth. CrowdHealth isn't health insurance, as you know. It's better, as you also know. CrowdHealth is a community of people helping to decentralize healthcare costs, from funding medical costs to helping negotiate your bills. CrowdHealth is truly amazing. We've used it twice now. We are now in the process of using it a third time as a result of the fact that Toby's motorcycle accident had medical consequences that were significant. So this is the case where the rubber leaves the road.
The rubber, unfortunately, did leave the road.
The rubber left the road. Yeah.
Yes, as did the deer. Maybe did Toby, we don't know. He does not have a clear memory of the actual moment of
it's
impact.
Not as clear as it might be. Yes, clear.
But so far, I mean,
C or an X in that.
But so far, interactions with them, I mean, this is a process, but it's been great as usual.
Yeah. Now, in our 2 prior instances, CrowdHealth community helped fund the hospital bills with a simple, straightforward app. We interacted with real people who were easy to reach and helpful. That wasn't entirely English, but it was very close. It was like a dialect, my own. Health insurance in the United States is a mess. Complicated, hostile, and expensive. We used to contend with this madness, but not anymore. There is a better way. You too can stop paying the rigged insurance game. CrowdHealth is a community of people funding each other's medical bills directly. No middlemen, no insurance, no nonsense. With CrowdHealth, you get the health care for under $100 a month for your first 3 months, including access to a team of health bill negotiators, low-cost prescriptions and lab testing tools, and a database of low-cost, high-quality doctors vetted by CrowdHealth. You pay for little stuff out of pocket, but for any event that costs more than $500, such as a motorcycle accident, a diagnosis that requires ongoing treatment, a pregnancy, you pay the first $500 and the crowd pays the rest. Seriously, it's easy, affordable, and so much better than health insurance. The health insurance system is hoping you'll stay stuck in their same overpriced, overcomplicated mess. Don't do it. Take charge of your health expenses and be part of a community. Join CrowdHealth to get started today for $99 a month for your first 3 months using the code DARKHORSE at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code DARKHORSE. And remember, CrowdHealth is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Join crowdhealth.com. All right.
All right. I want to start off today with a correction from last week.
Yes.
I said when we were talking about Trump and some of the good things he had done and some of the concerns that I have about him, including the banner that he has flown of himself, had flown of himself in front of the DOJ, in front of the DOJ. The DOJ was in the judicial branch. It is, of course, not. That was an error. I didn't misspeak. It was just an error on my part. It was not correct. So that is a correction.
Yep, I had the same instinct right after the episode. But anyway, here we are, back on track.
Yeah, so early in our podcast, when we were specifically talking about COVID a lot, as that was a developing story. We started in March of 2020. Many of our episodes began with actually, here's a correction, an update, a nuance. All three of those things would happen that we want to clarify or correct from the previous episode. And that, of course, is actually one of the things that we heard from people relatively early on as to why they kept coming back, because they knew that if we did make errors, as people who are trying to understand things that are developing in real time will make, if they are anything but utterly cautious or anything but simply accepting what the experts say, in which case they'll still say errors, but they will be able to blame the experts for those errors, then errors will be made. We will make errors. And what we have to do as honest brokers, as scientists, is acknowledge them when we make them. In this case, it's not a scientific error, but it was an error of fact that I said, and I was wrong, and here I am. Yeah,
here we are. It is important. And, it's funny. I was attacked by Michael Tracy on stage, who accused me of not having any standards with respect to truth, and that he, as a journalist, worries that he may have gotten something wrong, and would go back and correct something.
Does he own a mirror?
Never would.
Sorry,
I don't know what's going on with that guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was interesting to just have the assumption be, well, of course, because you're a podcaster,
because the genre includes people who don't correct their errors,
right? That you're definitely somebody who doesn't correct them. So
I mean, and the same category error is made in the opposite direction for people who claim the mantle of scientist. Well, he's a scientist, therefore what he said is true. And of course, we find quite the opposite across the board, especially during COVID. But this de facto assumption of correctness or incorrectness based on the category into which you've been put or have placed yourself is absurd. This is not how reason works. This is not how discourse works, or at least it's not how it should work. But many are getting away with it.
Yeah, it's a question of what standard you hold yourself to in whatever discipline you might be in.
Right.
So, correcting errors is important. We've done it. We've put the executive branch back together the way it needs to be.
Yeah, but I will say that error on my part doesn't change the analysis that I don't think it's appropriate, and I think it suggests poor judgment at best by the executive of the country at the moment to put himself on banners in the middle of the capital city.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the WNBA.
Let's do that.
Here we have, can you see my screen? No. Why would you be able to see my screen? Why? Week after week after week. Okay, hold on. It's not the right size yet. It hasn't figured itself out. Can you see it now? All right. Here we have a report from what is today? Is today the 12th? Today is the 12th. 4 days ago. From U.S. News World Report, WNBA commissioner says league will continue discussing issue of transgender participation. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this to frame why, because that sounds like not newsworthy. We're going to continue doing what we've been doing. And why are you standing in front of a podium then? Because it's not inherently newsworthy. Okay. What she's referring to in part is the fact that Sophie Cunningham has emerged as a current player for the WNBA as someone who is critical of the idea that men should be allowed to play in women's sports, and then also that a couple of professional NBA players, I believe both retired recently, have suggested that they are going to join the WNBA draft. So I've given you sort of the end of the story here, but let's just go through a few of what this story says. She says, WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert says, I know many of you have received questions in recent weeks regarding transgender athlete participation in women's basketball, and I expect this topic will continue to receive significant attention. I wanted to reach out to share how we are approaching these conversations at the league office and to thank those of you who respond to questions from the media with thoughtfulness and professionalism. I read that paragraph because it contains no information, as indeed does nothing in her press conference. This is now not her, but the person writing the article, talking about Sophie Cunningham voicing support for not having boys and men play in girls and women's sports in an ESPN article that was published last month. And there have, of course, been small rallies and protests in, wait for it, Seattle and Portland. The Fever were on the road last week, of course, because we here in the Pacific Northwest are just like ground central for stupid in this regard. The article goes on. There was a lone protester at the Fever's home game against Las Vegas on Thursday night. Indiana visits Chicago on Saturday. Members of two conservative groups are planning a rally in support of Cunningham ahead of that game. I do want to read a little bit more from this article, but first I want to point out that conservative groups in that sentence is strange, right? So to me, conservative used to mean, should still mean, a conservation of, a finding value in human values, morals, and institutions, things that we have created that conservatives continue to find value in and don't want to have destroyed by the sort of opposite side, which is looking for progress, and progress often comes at a cost of what has been before. So it's a tension between forward and back. And it's a tension between, what's over the horizon that we haven't seen yet and the traditions that we do know. And that's a real tension. And there are, I can't imagine a human being who I'd be interested in talking to who was purely on one side or the other of that divide. Everyone has to know that we are on the shoulders of giants. We have much that we have built that still is wonderful and intact and is worth preserving. And also we are looking forward and interested in making new things and being new in ways that we haven't even imagined before. So both of those are real, honest ways of looking at the world. And if you take one in exclusion to the other, it's a conservative perspective or a progressive perspective, and neither makes sense on its own. Here, though, members of two conservative groups are planning a rally in defense. Conservative isn't referring to defense of human-created morals or institutions. It's referring to, I don't even want to say belief, just like a recognition of fundamental, unchangeable reality. So, and I was thinking about this, did conservative ever mean this before? And there's a little way in which that I came up with, and maybe you can come up with more, Bret. The conservative has previously meant a defense of what is, of simply what is, regardless of what we want it to be. And I would say that the term family values comes in under this. And, values can mean a lot of things. And there have been defenses of what some conservatives have understood to be the values of the family or the ways that the family can only look that have been laden with moral valence. But a family is older than humans, older than primates even. So families are real things that may be defended in some circles or not defended in others, but the fact is that they are a real thing that exist, and there's no getting around it as a human. And there have been attempts by those on the left to claim that families are the source of all evil, and families and capitalism go hand in hand, and this is batshit crazy. But families are real, and exist without our understanding of them, exist without language. Anything that exists before language is suggestive of it being a very old and fundamental thing. But of course, sex, the non-changeable nature of human sex, of mammalian sex, is way older than us, way older than any human valence. And so the idea that now part of what it means to be a conservative, apparently, is to defend reality is a remarkable transition in terms of what the word means.
I think you've wrestled something to the surface that's really important. When we say conservative, it is shorthand for conserving the agreements about how we are to interact at a civilizational level.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the battle we're having. One of the things that conservatives will wish to conserve is an agreement that there's some place where we can pursue objective truth. We don't necessarily have the objective truth, but we settle on it through some mechanism. We don't defy it. And that the woke revolution, this week we are now talking about woke 1 versus woke 2, based on something that AOC said, but the woke revolution is weirdly an attack not on the details, but on the foundation. It's like, if it's part of the agreement about how we are to function, then it is to be opposed. And to anybody who understands the difference between what a human is at a biological level, the thing that has existed more or less unchanged for at least 200,000 years, versus what human beings are as they function in modern times, the idea of actually we're going to just blow it all up in the hope of going some new place that nobody has bothered to articulate how it would even work, so that we can say, you know, what you're saying doesn't work game theoretically. It doesn't feed anybody. It's the same. It's a much more extreme version of the error that, for example, communists have made that results in piles of skulls for predictable reasons. But we have a right. Go ahead.
At least with regard to communism and socialism, there's nuance. It's a narrative. There's social complexities. And, the story that those who would still defend these systems tell about it, the true form has never been tried, etc., isn't right. But it does take some thinking and some knowledge and some observation to assess why those things don't work. And males and females being different and immutable in humans is not complex. Right? Like the trajectories, the developmental and genetic and environmental features that create the situation of male and female in humans, and indeed in all of mammals being immutable, all of that is complex. Of course, we got molecular pathways, we got cellular pathways, we got, it's inherently complex. But the conclusion that sex is binary and immutable in humans is not. And there has never been an ability to claim otherwise. There have been, examples trotted forth from other clades in which hermaphrodites exist, and hermaphrodites do exist. And indeed, next week we may talk about avocados, which are extraordinary, right? And clownfish exist, and slugs, Pacific banana slugs exist. And we have simultaneous hermaphrodites and sequential hermaphrodites in various clades across the sexually reproducing organisms on this earth. And that's not anything that has ever happened in mammals, in part, but this is sufficient. This is a sufficient characterization to explain why this has never happened in mammals. We have genetic sex determination. XX individuals can't become XY or vice versa.
Yeah, it's literally one bit of information.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that the system that is set in motion by that one bit of information is not complex. It is.
Right.
But the reality of sex comes down to, you zoom down to the level of the presence or absence of the Y chromosome and the SRY gene. It's one bit. It's present or it's not, or functionally present or not. And so the point is, the attack on reason and agreement could not possibly be more. It's hard to go deeper than that. You're going to attack the binary underneath sex. Well,
right.
You are free to do that on your own time. But what you're doing is you're attacking our ability to have a basic agreement over the most obvious thing that there ever was. And that attack, there's something duplicitous about not even laying out your claim about what system exists in the aftermath of the one you're attacking, right? At least with communism. I mean, I detest this system because it is game theoretically destined to punish the wrong people and reward the wrong people,
right,
and to starve millions if done at scale, guaranteed to. But it's at least a claim that can be evaluated. We can say, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Okay? You can put that forward and you can say that's a desirable system. And then I can say, is it? Here's what I see. If that system worked, here's why it's not good. Mm-hmm. Right? That's an argument that we can actually have because you've at least put your proposal on the table.
And your argument is not, as you just laid it out, inherently about why it will never work, although that is also true. But the fact that the claim has been made that this is what we want, we can then, we can spend all of our time dithering about like, oh, it's never worked and it doesn't work and it won't work and it's never been tried and, all of that. And that, many millions of people have spent a lot of time doing that. But is the claim itself actually desirable is effectively an attempt to be scientific in an approach to the hypothetical.
Yeah, it's a values question.
Yeah.
So that both questions exist, and the point is they both exist explicitly. Is that a desirable state if you could get there? No. Punishes the wrong people, rewards the wrong people. Is it possible to get there? No, because the game theory, when you start rewarding the lazy people and punishing the productive people, causes a lack of productivity, which causes mountains of skulls. So the point is, at least there is a conversation. You have made a proposal. I'm going to point out why your proposal sucks. And then we do the thing that is, again, at not the level of basicness to our system that binary sex is, but, a couple layers up. How are we going to figure out what system to have? Well, we're going to hash it out.
Yeah.
And the point is, an enemy that refuses to enumerate what it wants and why, makes allusions to what we want, is a perfect world. And you're in the way because you're defending a system that's imperfect. And it's like, okay, tell me how that system works. Put it on the table so that we can talk about whether you know what you're talking about or not. And it's like, nope, we're going to be so vague that there is no evaluation. And the point is, that's an attack on reason itself, obviously. Mm-hmm. That's an attack on consent of the governed. You don't want my consent. You want to force me into a system that if you put it on the table, I could explain why it's not going to work, but you're not going to put it on the table so that that doesn't happen. And, it is self-defeating. You're going to destroy a system with no replacement, and the consequences will be real starvation and worse. Well,
I don't know how to segue that back to sex, but I mean, I agree with all of that. But this use of the term conservative, as I was saying, feels so much more fundamental and simple. Frankly, this doesn't feel like a complex issue, even though everything that led to the fact that sex is both binary and immutable in humans was complex. But the fact on the table in front of all of us throughout all of human history and prehistory and for tens of millions of years before that has been that mammals cannot change sex. And so I'm not. It doesn't come with all of the framing about like what is desired. It comes with a claim that is patently untrue. You can be the sex you're not, and now it's coming with. I don't know what the goal is, and I don't know if there's something bigger behind it that is trying to destroy all of the institutions of the West or just women's sports. I don't see why anyone would target women's sports specifically, but. At some level, getting people Getting women to defend the destruction of women's sports is quite a feat, and you got a lot of those doing that now. So, at one level, women's sports is not as important as almost anything else we could possibly be talking about. But having gotten people to turn on family members and tell them they couldn't come inside for Thanksgiving if they hadn't gotten their insane COVID shot is something that you can't ever undo. And these people are now going to tie themselves in knots trying to explain themselves to themselves and to others. Once you have defended the right to destroy a system that in the 1970s you would have been on the opposite side of because you would have been pro-Title IX at that point, is something that you can't undo. And it weakens individuals when you get them to argue for something indefensible.
All right, I want to propose something. Each system, civilization is a system. It comes about late in human history. Each system imports the things from the primordial systems that precede it.
Yeah.
And so the point is, you can argue that my eyes don't see, right? And you can argue that therefore what it is that I think my eyes see does not entitle me to act with respect to our shared civilizational space. Right. My point is, look, my eyes seeing is something that we agree on. We agree on it not because a bunch of people sat down in a room and came up with it. It's because all of the stuff, the lower level stuff, included that, right? Yes. Long before there was ever language, there was the assumption that your eyes see, right? Animals make this assumption about other animals. Not all animals can think this way, but a dog has an understanding of sight, and it has an understanding that its opponents and its allies can see.
Sight works before theory of mind. Before there's any need for any assumptions on anyone's part. It just functions.
Right. And so the point is it gets included at all levels. And what we're really looking at is an attack on our functioning, right? When the bombs are dropping on you, it's not because those people over there are well-intentioned and they think you need more shrapnel. That's not what's going on. They're trying to hurt you, right? So what's happening to us is that we have lots of ideas being lobbed onto us, but the problem is it's sophistry. What are we supposed to be doing? What do the people lobbing these things want us to do? They'd like us to tear each other apart.
Yeah.
That's
and this, to your point that you've made many times before, that it's actually not your or any of our obligation to carefully consider all of the things that come at us, because that is one. If we feel honor bound to consider all things that come at us in the form of language, then that is how our opponents will win. That is an easily gamified, easily gamed response.
Yes, we have an obligation to steelman an opposing position, but as I've said many times, you can't steelman a position that isn't offered in good faith. Mm-hmm. So, which brings us back to this story, where what you have is a proposal about how things are. It's not a serious proposal, right? People are now making careers explaining the truly binary nature of sex in humans and many other creatures. But the point is, it doesn't need to be explained because it's freaking obvious, and we can learn a ton about the details of the genes involved and the developmental programs involved and the anomalies that sometimes happen, but none of it is the slightest challenge to the underlying fact, which was obvious to everybody for all time until now. Mm-hmm. So we're now dealing with sophistry. And the point is, this story about the WNBA is about, okay, we're going to take another tack. We are not going to explain for the 87 billionth time why you're not making sense, because you're not updating your model.
Don't jump forward. We're going to show the tweets from the athletes once we get there.
Okay, but all I'll say is you have two options. You can argue back, or you can reducto ad absurdum, which is an alternative.
Yeah. So we'll get there shortly. I just want to share a couple more bits from this this report out 4 days ago in U.S. News. The league's collective bargaining agreement states that only players who are women are eligible to play in the WNBA, but it doesn't include any more specific language about gender identity or sex assigned at birth. And here we have, and we'll show their tweets. On Friday, 2 former NBA players, Enes Kanter Freedom and Royce White, declared themselves eligible for the NBA draft, saying they identify as women. The commissioner for the WNBA said in response, "We recognize that this is a complex and nuanced topic, and we will continue to have important conversations with all of you on the Players Association in the weeks and months ahead." Again, it is actually neither complex nor nuanced, as much as everything that went up to this point was. This is not actually a complex or nuanced topic, and the fact that the commissioner of the WNBA thinks it is, or is still trying to play both sides of this, suggests that the WNBA is not in good hands. The WNBA Players Association released a statement on social media Friday that emphasized diversity and inclusion while saying the group will not be used as political pawns. Well, you are being used as political pawns. You imagine that because the pushback is coming from people who have been called conservatives, and that this must be a politically conservative movement to what? To believe in reality. Right? Like, that's it. This is not political pawnmanship by the NBA players, by the so-called conservatives. You became political pawns at the point that you started being willing to say, if you identify as something that you fundamentally are not, then you are that thing. That was you becoming a political pawn right there. Let me just finish reading this little bit here. "We embrace justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion." The statement read, "Those are the values that unite this union and allow it to protect women's sports while creating transformational change. Hate, abuse, and demonization of any person or group of people, including transgender people, only fuel fear, division, and harm. We will continue to have hard conversations, but we will not be used as political pawns again." So, amazing. I feel like we're allowed to talk about people who are making no sense at all, derisively and pointedly. We are allowed to talk about furries who want to go into the schools and say, actually, no, that's a kink. You can't do that. And the same thing with teachers with big fake boobs who, I don't remember what happened with that. I thought that was going to have been a scam all along. I don't actually remember what happened with that, with the shop teacher with the giant boobs.
I remember the teacher.
Yeah. But like, these are all things that we're allowed to say, actually, we're going to talk about that. And we're going to make a decision about it, or we're going to have some moral clarity around it and say, actually, no. Some WNBA players and coaches have come out in support of transgender athletes, including Seattle Storm center Stephanie Dolson and Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve. Reeve, the Minnesota Lynx coach, said on August 1st, "We need to protect trans kids. To me, it's a human rights issue. Every kid has a right to sports." I'm a broken record at this point, but it's not a human rights issue. It's a don't let the trolls win issue. Every kid has a right to sports. I don't think that's true. First of all, a right to sports. No, I played sports. I enjoyed it. I think that in America, we do have protections around expecting that children are allowed to try out for sports, but nothing in the trans debate says that you can't play sports. Nothing at all. You just can't cheat. And that's what sports is, right? Sports is learning, in sports for children, children's sports is learning how to play by the rules and compete most amazingly and beat your competitors honestly. And the trans debate says, nope, sorry, the cosplaying LARPers get to win because cheating rules. Like, no, that's the opposite of sports. And frankly, a coach for the WNBA ought to know that.
So at some level, I mean, I obviously agree with everything you've said. On the other hand, it's a trap. It's designed.
It is a trap.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a meta rule here. The meta rule is we win.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you can tell it's a meta rule because what they're saying is, oh, geez, we didn't anticipate NBA.
Okay, well, we'll get there.
Stars doing this. But their response is, we will continue to talk about it, right? And then there's a proclamation, and the proclamation is, we do support these people doing this, and we don't support those people doing that. And what we haven't figured out is how to write a rule in advance that lets these people do this without letting those people do that, which is exactly the point. You're destroying sport by creating the only rule is our discretion.
Let's show these two tweets, which were how the announcements were made by these two players. We have from Royce White. Both of these were on, I think, August 7th, excuse me. As I stated a few days ago, I am declaring for the 2027 WNBA draft. I identify as a sometimes identifying transgender woman. My wig is in the mail. And just scroll down and let's see a couple of the comments. Man, I can't speak now. If only this coward had an irrational fear of grifting instead of flying, says someone. Apparently, White has had a fear of flying. He says, dude, my transition cured my fear of flying. So that's it for this one. Let's go to the next one if we can. I'm sorry, I don't follow the NBA, so I've forgotten. Enes Kanter Freedom. And can we show the video that he's posted the text here, but then he also delivers it as a video.
After careful consideration and reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, I am officially declaring myself a WNBA prospect. If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA. My team and I have carefully examined the WNBA's eligibility criteria and governing framework surrounding self-identification and inclusion. Based on the current guidelines, I can and am officially declaring my eligibility for the upcoming WNBA draft in May 2027. I am definitely not here to mock, make fun of, or disrespect any community or personal choices. I am simply asking that the current rules be applied equally to everyone. The rules that represent the very values many WNBA players and coaches have publicly advocated for. My team and I are prepared to ensure these guidelines are applied equally, consistently, and without exception. And I look forward to the WNBA honoring its stated principles. See you at training camp.
So, really well done.
Yeah.
And he's got responses from many of the expected corners saying, like, not you go girl, but it should be that, right? And of course, some on the sort of pseudo left over in trans camp are calling this, for instance, a stunt. It's quite the opposite of a stunt. The trans thing, the part where dudes put on wigs or fake boobs or nothing at all and say that they're women and compete against women, either because they just like to win even when they're cheating, or they actually like to beat up women if it's that kind of sport. That's the stunt. Like, you already did the stunt. And now there are many attempts to undo the stunt. And one of them is, and this is a place where you've been speaking to already today, is how do you undo a stunt? Well, a lot of us have tried logic and analysis and just pointing out what's true and pointing out how obvious it is and how none of these people have clothes on, and everyone's been like, oh, look at the nice clothes. Like, no, they're still naked, right? But the stunt nature of the initial trans madness, like, this is a brilliant way to do it. Have two guys who are demonstrably men, who are demonstrably excellent athletes and men, make the claim, because they have looked and they have seen that the WNBA says only women can play, but given that they don't define women in the simple way that we all can define women, human, adult, female, says that they can declare themselves women and can go out for the draft. Who knows how this will end, but it's a brilliant move on both of their parts.
Yes, they are demonstrably men if it is something that can be demonstrated. So what they are effectively doing is saying, fine, your terms are acceptable, right? If you're going to define this such that anybody can join the WNBA by simply declaring themselves female, then we will do that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they're men in every regard except this declaration. And I think the way to think of it is, there's something about this that can happen because we're discussing this in the realm of sports, but we're really not. Imagine the prison discussion, which has always strangely not loomed large enough in our thinking.
Yeah.
You've got somebody who commits a violent crime, a man who declares himself female to go to women's prison. Now, I have no doubt women's prison is better if you're a man. right? Even if you don't intend to take advantage of anything in women's prison, it's just probably a less brutal place where you stand a much better chance of not suffering greatly. But the fact that under the new rules that the wokes would have us apply, anybody can just simply declare themselves this, and the state has to send you to whatever prison you're telling the state you have to go to after they've convicted you of a notorious crime.
Yeah, what part of prison doesn't the state understand?
Right. So the point is, these guys in WNBA space where this matters, but it doesn't, nothing vital to civilization hinges on it. But on the other hand, everything vital hinges on it because we have to be able to have basic agreements about basically obvious stuff, about reality itself.
Right.
We have to agree that a rapist can't go to a women's prison because he prefers to be there because we've created a loophole that he's obviously going to walk through.
And that thing that you just said, a rapist shouldn't be allowed to go to a women's prison just because he says he wants to. That is being framed as a conservative talking point.
Mm-hmm.
That thing that you just said has no politics. That is simply obvious and real. There's no politics there. And yet all you have to do in the media, in the mainstream media, is frame it as a conservative talking point, and a certain number of people who should be able to think for themselves have like the blinds go down over their eyes, like, oh, cannot hear because conservative talking point.
Well, these malevolent morons, or whatever they actually are, who are pushing this nonsense, have actually handed all of the cards to conservatism, because what they have in effect accidentally done is granted that a conservative is anybody who wants to conserve the features of the system on which 100% of us are dependent. Right? In order for the crops to mature, to be harvested, to show up in the frickin' supermarket, you have to have a civilization that is capable of managing the energy, capable of managing rule breakers, capable of managing all of the details of that system. You're sabotaging that system. You're literally threatening 100% of us with starvation on the basis of no proposal for an alternative that we can evaluate and challenge. So at some level, if you're going to effectively say anybody who wants to defend anything that ever worked is a conservative, then you are effectively declaring conservatives synonymous with those with any capacity for reason. That wasn't the doing of dastardly conservatives who tricked you. That was your own fucking doing, right?
That's right.
You decided conservatives are the people who can think, period. That's what you did. And that's not any of our problem. If you want to have a discussion about a system that you might propose, then you have to write it down. And I just want to emphasize that. The point that these guys are brilliantly making is the rule that you claim dictates eligibility cannot be written down. Either it's going to exclude the autogynephiles who would like to play in the WNBA, or it's going to include these guys. You have to pick between those. You can't write a rule which is effectively, the rule will be that we decide who's for real when they declare themselves female. Oh, that's better than gamete size? Like, in what universe? So their point is, fine. If you're going to declare a universe in which you are the arbiter of who's a woman, congratulations. You're the arbiter. Now tell me why I'm not one, right? You have to explain it now. I also wanted to just add that this is brilliant, of course. It does harken back to a chapter many will remember when Zuby, the hip-hop artist, in 2019 decided that if people were going to play games like this, he was going to break the women's deadlifting record by declaring himself a woman for a moment and then doing so. And so we have his tweet here. And he says, I keep hearing about how biological men don't have any physical strength advantage over women in 2019. So watch me destroy the British women's deadlift record without trying. P.S. I identified as a woman whilst lifting the weight. Don't be a bigot. And you want to play the little video. Now, I don't think he intended this to be a huge deal. It did turn into one. Wow. That was one strong woman.
Mm-hmm. He has actually responded to Enes Kanter Freedom's announcement by saying, "You have my full support, sister."
Love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is we have to stop meeting these people under the rules that they have set. They have
Right.
set.
Why would we do that?
Yeah. They are involved in sophistry, and their sophistry is deadly serious because on the other side of it is the collapse of everything that functions. So they have to be defeated by us, and we're not going to defeat them. You know, I mean, imagine you are on the battlefield and the bombs are raining down on you, and somebody says, well, you know, maybe we are shrapnel deficient. It's like, no, not a thing.
Yep. I mean, I guess I'm reminded too of just standard toxic social dynamics where, and I believe that this is much more common among women than among men because of the way that women tend to compete rather than the way that men tend to compete. But I've seen it in men too, where someone will decide what game you're playing. And upon coming at you with how they're much better at this game, whatever it is, at, you know, winning over friends or, you know, I don't know, whatever social games they're playing, they come at you and they're already demonstrably better at it. And you just don't want to play that game, right? Like, I feel like most of us have had this experience, at least women, like, oh, you are good at that. And I probably do have an opinion about whether or not I think that's cool because I don't like that game. I'm not interested, but I'm not claiming I'm winning and I'm not claiming I'm losing. I'm just not playing. Mm-hmm. And that is actually, like, that is the thing to do. If you don't want to play, just don't play. But it's also absolutely guaranteed to infuriate the person who is trying to make you play a game that they own, they made up, they have the rules, like they're guaranteed to win. It's going to infuriate them. But it's also exactly the right response in this case. Just say, with regard to the people who are, you know, cosplaying and autogynephiling it up and all this, like, you know, nope. Actually, this was our game. In the case of sports, like we already had a game here, and there are rules. And you want to do this, you go play your own game, I guess. You don't get to infringe upon what we're doing though. And the idea of like, well, I'm playing this game and it's your game. Like, nope, that's not my game. You got yours and not interested. You go away now.
You know, that is actually the exact dynamic. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, under normal circumstances, I mean, in fact, what is civilization? Civilization is, among other things, an agreement that whatever the underlying philosophy, we have something called ownership of property. Mm-hmm. Now, you can stand at the edge of my wheat field and you can say, well, that isn't your wheat field because stolen land, etc.
Right.
And what is supposed to happen is that if you attempt to treat that as not my land and, let's say, burn down my wheat, then men with guns come and they take you away. You are trying to invalidate that men with guns are going to enforce the basics that allow civilization to run, and thereby inviting exactly what will obviously follow if we don't have those agreements, right? If anybody can burn down anybody's field at any time because nobody really owns a field, do they? Now, I'm not arguing philosophically that there's no argument to be had, but I am arguing that actually the system that puts food on tables and takes monsters and locks them behind bars is something only a moron could want to see evaporate, because unless you're the, I don't know, 1 in 500 million people who's going to come to rule over everybody else by dint of force, then you're going to be on the losing end of a system that does level the playing field by saying, hey, you can earn, you can buy, and we will protect your right to own it, right? If that goes away, then everything goes away, including food on which we all depend at a biological level that predates any of this. Mm-hmm. So I do think the problem here is this is being portrayed as a you're a bigot because you don't want me to be able to live however I want. And the answer is no. I do want you to be able to live however you want, up to the point that you start disrupting the ability of the rest of us to live how we were living, right? We are entitled to do that. You're, in fact, literally entitled to starve to death based on your own stupidity if you want. But you can't force other people to starve because you're confused. It's like contagious stupidity that leads to starvation is where these people are headed. And the simple ability, if we could simply have said, cute game, go play it where it doesn't affect us and our children, and you're fine. You actually have that right. We're not even telling you. You can't come up with some fantasy world in which the rules are as arbitrary and stupid as you're saying they are. Maybe you're even smart. You can go do that and you'll be the winners because you know something the rest of us don't get. But for God's sake, you do not have the right to interfere with you don't have the right to sink the boat we're all on. Period. The end.
I'm reminded of something I said to you last night. I was shaking my head. I'm like, man, of all the groups of people I've been wrong about in the past, I think the group of people that I was most wrong about were the libertarians. Boy, did I have no sense that the libertarians were making any sense at all for a long time. My dad was a Republican. I knew plenty of conservatives. I was interested in and sympathetic to many things that Republicans and conservatives or people who called themselves that thought at the time. Like, I just thought the libertarians had no idea what they were talking about. And my position has basically done an entire 180 on this.
Yeah. Once you've seen what happens when crazy and or malevolent people get hold of power, the appeal of, hey, how about we just minimize the amount of power and,
My God.
Yeah, I mean, we did, yes, there are things to be talked about over in libertarian space, things that are common blind spots in that area.
Sure.
But in general, the strong fear of people who cannot handle the responsibility.
Let me just fix this for you. I'll do it myself. Thank you. We're good.
Fix, is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fix, kind of the way we fix the cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's never been the same.
No. He's certainly not going to make any more of the cat that he is.
Yes, that's right.
Right. Okay.
All right.
On to lighter topics.
Oh, I doubt it.
All right.
I doubt it.
Okay, this is a rough one, folks. I will tell you that I happened on a thread that I'm shocked very few people have yet seen. Written by somebody I have not met in person yet, but somebody I've interacted with a lot electronically. I would call him a electronic friend. Is that what a person is? Anyway,
E-friend.
An e-friend.
Electronic friend sounds like he might not be made of carbon.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he is made of carbon, isn't he? Have you checked?
I have not checked because I've never met him in person. Not that I would have if I had met him in person, but at least the technical possibility.
I mean, this sort of thing is pretty good at this point.
Yeah, at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. That sounds like a deep rule of the universe. At this point,
Touching
somebody,
visceral interaction can assess the carbon-based nature of the life form.
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right. So Josh Walkos put up a thread that caused me not only to fall out of my chair onto the floor, but to get back into my chair, start reading again, and fall out a second time. It's that crazy. So let us take a look at Josh's thread. I am incidentally going to suggest Josh is somebody who has done a lot of really interesting investigative work. I have periodically retweeted things of his. I think they're very worthy, and I would personally appreciate it, and I'm sure Josh would appreciate it, if you found his Twitter handle and followed him. He also has a Substack. So he's at Josh Walkos, JoshWalkos, and you can check out this incredible thread, which frankly should spread like wildfire, which it hasn't done yet.
It's remarkable.
Yes, it's remarkable. Now, maybe we should just start reading the thread, and then I will introduce some things.
Okay.
Can you do it? Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be great.
Mega thread from Josh Walkos. Inside Toka and the new age of frictionless surveillance. Toka is an Israeli cyber intelligence company backed by Andreessen Horowitz that sells its technology exclusively to governments, militaries, intelligence agencies, and law enforcement. Leaked internal documents revealed Toka's technology can reportedly locate cameras, remotely access them, watch live feeds, and even alter live or previously recorded footage while concealing evidence the system was compromised. Yes, they can alter live or previously recorded footage while concealing evidence the system was compromised. I wonder where that ability could come in handy. The stated purpose for altering footage, quote, masking of on-site activities during covert operations. In other words, imagine an intelligence team conducting an operation inside a hotel or perhaps a college campus covered in security cameras. Instead of disabling the cameras, they can allegedly compromise them, alter what they record, and leave behind footage that doesn't show what actually happened. Toka calls this new world, quote, frictionless surveillance. Nothing concerning about intelligence agencies possessing the ability to secretly rewrite the video evidence of their own operations.
Okay, so let's pause here. What's on the screen is a screenshot from a Haaretz, which is an English language Israeli newspaper publication, revealing the technology that is being sold by this Israeli company called Toka. Now, this is fascinating. If you go to Haaretz to look at this article, can you scroll down, Jen? So here you have the title of the article, "This dystopian cyber firm could have saved Mossad assassins from exposure." Now scroll down. That is the sum total of what is there.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. There's a whole article.
I know, but that's an archive. This is the Haaretz site.
Well, yes, but the archive is what Josh links to.
Right. But my point is, there's something very interesting. This article came out in 2022. Mm-hmm. I am shocked that we have not yet had a broad discussion. We've been talking about flock cameras and the danger that might exist because these ostensible license plate readers could be repurposed for surveillance of the population walking around in public.
Shallow end of the pool.
That is the shallow end of the frickin' pool. Okay. This, what we have is a company marketing its own technology that it says can be used to hack into effectively the entire Internet of Things. That is to say, cameras and microphones that exist in the world, cars. Their technology allows them to access those things, and not only to tap into whatever is being generated by those things, but apparently to disable them, or even to alter the feed that they are producing. So we've all seen movies like this. The Haaretz article, when you delve into it, talks about Ocean's 11, where criminals use a fake feed pointed at a phony vault to trick the security folks who are watching the vault into thinking that nothing is taking place, right? All very clever. We get it. But here we have a company offering this as a service. And imagine, as Josh gets to in his thread, imagine this being paired with this massive network of Flock and other brands of license plate readers that are anywhere and everywhere. Now, reason I fell out of my chair when I read this.
Oh, was that what happened?
Yes, that's what that thud was. Yeah. And then that thud another 30 seconds later, that was the second time. The reason that I fell out of my chair was just thinking about the crazy arguments that we are having over things like the Epstein prison surveillance cameras being offline at the critical moment, or the fact that we are fighting over weirdly isolated bits of CCTV footage relative to the Charlie Kirk case. Now, I'm not saying that Toka has been involved in something in either of those two instances, but what I am saying is, hey, here you've got a company proudly portraying a technology that if you introduced it broadly, I mean, here's a good idea. Maybe this technology should never be in the wrong hands. Because, like, if it were, then, like, they could commit any crime they felt like committing, and get off scot-free because the surveillance footage would falsify the hypothesis that they had committed the crime. So this is like the end of criminal jurisprudence with respect to anybody who can access this technology.
As Josh says in this AI-generated image at the top of his tweet thread, they don't just watch you, they decide what you remember. And that's, that's an extrapolation, but that's exactly what this capacity will facilitate.
Yes, this is the ability to, and I've been worried about scripting history in a million different ways. There are lots of features about scripting history. There's certainly the Orwellian concept of memory holing things so that you lose access. But this is another level because we human beings, I mean, as in our earlier discussion today, we human beings are used to having the ability not to know that what our eyes saw is literally accurate. Eyes can be fooled. There are optical illusions. Different eyewitnesses to the same event will have seen different things. There's no doubt there's a lot of wiggle room in the idea that your eyes are simply perceiving literal reality. But they are about the best thing going. And the ability to figure out what did happen based on what multiple witnesses actually saw happen is crucial. But we are not equipped for the technological part of this, where...
No, we're barely equipped for the organic part of it. We know that we deceive ourselves. And as soon as we hear a story that sounds more compelling, we update our own and don't necessarily know that we did so. That's the organic part. That's the part that we are supposedly equipped for. With technological interference, there's no hope, really.
No, the ability to actually create false memories for profit is an inhuman level of power. Now, they say this company, an Israeli company that has now moved to Maryland, interestingly, says it will only contract with governments. I don't know how much comfort I take from that.
Zero at this point.
Right. So, the point is, okay, you are augmenting the two-tier civilization that we already have, where there are laws for us little people, and then there are standards for the power players, and they are radically different. And, this is, at least the wokes are dumb and incapable. Okay? These people are highly capable. So this company, Toka, was founded, one of its founders is Ehud Barak.
Yeah.
Ehud Barak, which...
And is a former Israeli prime minister.
Former Israeli prime minister, yeah. Long time ago, soldier from the 40s, becomes prime minister of Israel.
Lefty-ish.
Yep, lefty-ish. Has an Epstein connection that is like numerous interactions. And in fact, there is, you want to show that Forbes article? There's a Forbes article. Let's see.
Looks like the one.
Yeah, Forbes article talking about Ehud Barak, and it talks about tech investments. And I sent you a screenshot. Do you have the screenshot from the Forbes article talking about Ehud Barak pitching Jeffrey Epstein on? So here we have...
Read it.
Yeah, you want to read that?
This is from a Forbes article. I didn't catch when. He also sought Epstein's help, he being Barak, former Israeli Prime Minister Barak, who was one of the founders of Toka. He also sought Epstein's help with Tel Aviv-based surveillance business Toka just before Barak publicly launched it in July 2018 with $12.5 million in funding from the likes of Andreessen Horowitz. While there's no evidence Epstein invested, Barak suggested the financier could promote Toka to his government contacts, writing, quote, "You can use it vis-a-vis senior officials or heads. It is built for governments as clients."
So, okay, here you have former Prime Minister of Israel in the founding of this company trying to sell it to Epstein, a notorious criminal who obviously was violating the most basic agreements that we have in civilization. How far that goes is a matter of debate, but nonetheless, that's an amazing thing to find connected there. And to find, how surprising is it that this story was apparently out in, it was full-fledged in 2022, 4 years ago.
Yeah, and it was 8 years ago that we've got the Epstein connection being published in Forbes.
Yeah,
this is the first time hearing about it.
Right. So weird that this story has not been prominent in our thinking as we were looking at the Epstein supposed suicide and the strange failure of the cameras that would potentially have shed light.
And the general rise in the surveillance state.
The general rise of the surveillance state. This 2022 article, which both does and does not exist in the world. You can find it on the archive, but you can't find it on Haaret's site. How many weeks have we been talking about flock cameras? And nobody said, by the way, did you know that there's an Israeli company that's selling governments the ability to find the feed of any camera connected to the internet and alter it seamlessly? Like, how did that not come up everywhere? And why is it that when you go to Haaret's that the article isn't there? There's literally no information in that article beyond what's hinted at in the title. It's one paragraph and it says nothing. So I'm just stunned. I'm not stunned that somebody would attempt to create this technology.
Yeah.
I am stunned that in light of the fact that this is well underway, involves investors that we know well, and I should say, in the interest of full disclosure, I do know Mark Andreessen. I'm surprised to find him here. I know him as somebody who is deeply concerned about the rights of citizens, and this strikes me as exactly the sort of thing that would alarm him. So I don't know what's going on with Andreessen Horowitz. There is also a weird thing reported in TechCrunch. They also put out an article. So here's the article. A16Z, that's Andreessen Horowitz, backed Toka, wants to help U.S. agencies hack into security cameras and other IoT devices. And then I sent you a screenshot from that. Okay. You want to read that?
But this kind of tech doesn't have to be limited to war zones. TechCrunch reported last month that A16Z's Ben Horowitz tried to donate funds to the Las Vegas Police Department for purchasing Toka software. They didn't take him up on it, a Toka spokesman said.
So I don't even know what to make of this claim. I've not seen any denial of it. But Ben Horowitz...
in this article, this is an article from 2024.
Yep.
Right?
Ben Horowitz apparently tried to donate money to the Las Vegas Police Department to purchase this software for a company in which his company is a major investor.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to think about that. What does that mean? And I will also just say,
and a police department not accepting a donation of what would presumably be valuable is interesting in and of itself, and for me raises questions of what were the inside specifics on the donation. Were there strings? What were the strings?
What were the strings? Yeah, wouldn't you love to know what that conversation was? I mean, and it raises many questions. Is it legal to hack into these cameras and microphones and whatever else that just because they're connected to the internet? Presumably it isn't. If it is, obviously that should be that's a matter of concern. We should rule it out, and this company shouldn't have a business model because its business model would be illegal. But apparently nobody seems to have raised the question of whether or not this business model is legal. So presumably it is through some loophole in which, I mean, imagine, you've got a security camera. It's tied to the internet so you can monitor it without being physically sitting in a particular place. These people have the right to modify. Somebody breaks into your house. These people have the right to modify the output of your camera so you can't even see the output of some camera you bought to monitor your own property. Like, what planet are we living on? This is insane.
Yeah.
Right? And, Charlie Kirk, geez, there are a bunch of us idiots out here who can't see the obvious fact that Tyler Robinson, with one shot took the guy out, with his Mauser from the roof of the Losi building, right? There's footage.
There's footage.
There is footage, but you know what else there isn't? More footage, right? And
also, I mean, you've been saying for years, actually, way before AI actually had this capacity, but you have been saying for years, pics, and it didn't happen. I remember it was probably 5 years ago, like early COVID, that you started saying that. It's like, oh my goodness. Oh, we're not there yet, I didn't think. Maybe we were already there, but now, yes.
In fairness, when I said that, my focus was on the looming fact of technology that will allow you to produce video that is just simply, pixel by pixel, a creation, but it appears to represent. It did not occur to me. I mean, it certainly would have occurred to me that, our CIA or the Mossad or, whatever security agency that has high-tech capability would attempt to modify feeds sometimes or disable cameras. That's obviously a concern. But the idea that there's a private company that has this as their business model, offering its clients access to any camera connected to the internet, like, we are not in Kansas anymore. This is somebody with a website advertising a future dystopia that is a subscription service.
Saying, get on board first.
Right. And
you want to be the top of our dystopian pyramid scheme.
I don't want to live in a world where a person can be erased and the people who did the erasing run no risk because they have a subscription to a service that allows their crime to be perfect.
Yeah.
That's really what this is. And how much do we already live in that world? We don't know. But it's absolutely shocking to me that, Haaretz, and I will tell you, my Israeli friends are jumping out of their freaking chairs at this moment. I will get multiple messages that say, you understand that Haaretz is about as reliable as the New York Times. You're reporting something, right? Fine. If this showed up
but
in
the original article, which I read, has information in it. Does that suggest the fact that Haaretz is the equivalent, the Israeli equivalent of the New York Times? I'm paraphrasing.
I can't vouch for it, but that's what I'm told.
Does that mean that nothing in it is accurate, that they've never done accurate reporting? I mean, we've taken the New York Times to task over and over and over again, and also talked about stories where they did get things right. So, independently, we have no way of knowing in this particular story. But the fact that you can read the story in the archive and it looks pointed and careful, and pointed is clear and careful is, maybe a judgment call. But the fact that they've taken down most of that story from their main site suggests that there is something to be seen.
Yeah, it's really interesting that story of all stories, it's not like it's gone. That would be even more conspicuous. It's like it seems to be present, but it has no content. Huh? That's odd. But in any case, I don't want to hear that the source is no good. It's like the New York Times. Right? If this was the New York Times and I was reporting the story, I would be looking at the content and I would be saying, which of these things are not accurate? Where has the New York Times screwed up and reported something that isn't true? Right. So if you're going to tell me I should ignore this because it's in Haaretz, I want to know what it is they got wrong. Look at the archive of this article. The article looks good, and frankly, it matches Forbes and TechCrunch and other information that I've seen, which I will cover in some other place later. But this article looks good. Presumably, Andreessen Horowitz would be raising quite a stink if they had been misportrayed. So where's the flaw? And if this is the world that we do live in and are going to continue to live in a more and more concentrated form as cameras connected to the internet spread around our environment, then we have a right to discuss this. And frankly, we have a right to do the obvious thing, which is to declare this unacceptable and create a system of penalties for anybody who attempts it, right? You can't have a system in which just because you're a government, you're allowed to commit crimes and not suffer the consequences, right? That is specifically the inverse of the West. Nobody's above the law.
That's right.
All right.
You there?
I think we are there.
All right. Well, we are going to take a little break and then come back on locals with our Q&A. Consider joining us there. We have a good time with these. We'll go for about an hour, depending. And check out our sponsors this week. I'm looking around. Masa Chips, Xlear, and CrowdHealth, all awesome. All definitely worth finding. And reminder that if you appreciate what we're doing, consider subscribing, sharing, liking what you see in both the full episodes and the clips that our amazing producer Jen is putting out on a number of platforms at this point. And until you see us next time, be good to the ones you love, eat real food, and get outside.
Be well, everyone.